All right, completing the square. Can we remember how to complete the square? I'll give you a step for free, though admittedly it's a very easy step. I want to take this thing and complete a square out of it, right? So I want to get that -3, you want to get it out of the way. Okay, so your first step would be this. Let's put that 3 over here on the right-hand side, okay? But now comes the trickier step, the completing bit. I want to add something. What do I want to add?
8 on 1.
Okay, so it's gonna come from this number, right? It's gonna come from this number. I want to know what number would I add to this to make this whole thing a perfect square. Good morning. Okay, I want to do 2 things. I'm going to halve and then I'm going to square. I'm going to halve it, square it, halve it, square it. So you halve that and that gives you 4, and then you square that. 4 times 4 is 16. You add it to one side, so you better add it to the other. Okay? So now on the left-hand side, and voila, I have my perfect square. This is something all squared. What is it? Y plus 4. Very good. Okay? So these are the kinds of things, right, where we need to be able to recognize those a bit quicker so that we're not wasting brain time trying to think, ooh, what's the perfect square? We can always, if you try something, if you try like y plus 8 squared, that's a common error to make because you just see the 8 and you think that would give that a go. But you can go back and you won't get your original line, right? So it's always easy to test. I've just got 19 over there because I'm adding those together. Having made a square, what do I do with this square? Why is it useful? I can take the square root of both sides, right? So that leaves me with y plus 4 over here. And on the right-hand side, 19 is not a square number, right? So it's going to become the square root of 19, right? What am I missing?
Plus or minus.
Plus or minus. There's 2. There's 2 different numbers that I can square to give me 19. One of them's the positive one and the other one's the negative one, okay? Last step. I just want y by itself, right? So I will chuck that 4 over the other side, and I'm home, okay? So that was a fairly involved process. There's a lot of thinking, even though there weren't many lines, okay? This question doesn't say anything else in terms of, how do you want the answer? So that's exact. You don't need to do anything to that, okay? But if we were asked to, for instance, approximate, that happens sometimes. It'll happen increasingly, as you'll see in the next lesson. So if I wanted to approximate this, I'm going to get this into my calculator and I'd get a couple of decimals out of it, okay? Last one, because completing the square is, a mentally intense task to do, we developed, and this is like the last thing we did, we developed the formula, right? The quadratic formula, and it's this long, awkward fraction. I'm going to ask you to help me remember it. So that once you use this, you just put all your numbers in, 1, 2, 3, and you don't need to think about it almost, you just have to substitute. So, who can help me remember the quadratic formula? What's on the top?
Minus
Starts
b.
with it. Yeah, minus b, what's in the middle?
Plus minus.
Plus or minus, which corresponds to this, plus or minus. And then because there's a square root coming after here, what's underneath the square root?
B squared plus 4ac.
B squared, so very close, minus 4ac. Which is interesting, by the way. We'll come to the fact that sometimes that number can be negative, and you're like, what's that about? I don't know if you remember that. We'll have a look at it again. That's the numerator. Okay, very good, you got very close. What's the denominator? It's simpler. Just 2a, good. Okay, excuse me. So all that matters here, now that we have this formula, this is automating the process, right? So you've got your A here, you've got your B here, and there is C. Don't forget it's got that minus sign hanging on to the right, okay? So now we know what A, B, and C are. Let's just throw it in, okay? Minus B, that's just going to be minus 3. Chuck that plus or minus in the middle. B squared, I just dealt with B, so it's 3, I square it, and that gives me 9. Minus 4, now here comes my A and my C, right? It'll be 2 times, remember we talked about that negative 4. Okay, 2 times negative 4. I'm even going to write that rather than just evaluating it straight away. Okay, and I'm then going to divide by 4. Okay, now we'll just mention, you guys know just as much as I do that 2 times negative 4 is just negative 8, okay, and you probably could do that in your head, but that's such a common place for errors to come up that people accidentally, they'll get the sign wrong here or they'll get the number. If I write both numbers there and I make a mistake, I can find it later, okay, but every time I skip working, that makes it harder for me to trace my own errors, okay. Teachers make errors too, so you make it easier for it to find rather than harder. Okay, we're pretty much ready to go. We've got that minus 3 plus or minus, okay. What's happening there? I've got 9 double negative, that becomes a plus, right? Plus what? 32, right? 4 times 2 times 4, 32. That 4 is still hanging around on the bottom, okay? 9 plus 32, that's a bit of an awkward number. That's just 41, I'm guessing. My brain still works over the holidays. And that's it, just like we had before. It's a messy surd, so you can't really do much to simplify that, unless they wanted you to approximate, okay?